My name is Morgan Werth. I graduated from Clemson in December of 2018. Currently, I'm working as an associate producer for the UFC out here in Las Vegas, and I'm also working as a sideline reporter for the Las Vegas Desert Dog, which is an NLL, so National Lacrosse League team. It's a professional box lacrosse league, and it's a lot of fun. I graduated in 2018. It was a semester early from all of my friends, so I ended up hanging out in Clemson for a little bit. But during that time, I was working with Clemson Athletics in the video department and video services. It was really important for me to have going to Clemson, having Clemson Athletics on my resume somewhere, just because it's such a school that's notorious for sports. It was a no-brainer. So I spent that semester operating cameras, doing really anything on the TV side of what Clemson does in the athletic department. And meanwhile, I was applying for hundreds of jobs, and when I say hundreds, I mean hundreds. Networking like crazy. I was on LinkedIn. I was having informational meetings with whoever would take the time to talk to me, just asking them sort of how they got their start in the industry. And then somehow, in some way, through that networking, I connected with ESPN. And it's still been a good amount of time after I had graduated that I was interviewing with them, probably that following summer. So I know I was lucky to have the privilege of staying in Clemson and not settling necessarily for my first job. But yeah, so I got connected with ESPN in Charlotte, North Carolina. I interviewed with them, ended up accepting a job as a production assistant. And basically what I was doing was coordinating live college games for sports. So it was gymnastics. I worked on volleyball, I worked on football, I worked on basketball, really anything that a producer would need. So someone who's really leading the shows and sports that you watch on TV. My job was just being an assistant to them, making sure the edits were complete, making sure they had mic flags for the talent, making sure they had banners, just the simplest of things, and just making sure everything got to the actual game. Once COVID hit, I wanted a switch, a change of pace. So I had been an intern with the UFC before my senior year of college. So I reached back out and got in touch with them. And that's how I ended up coming back to the UFC. I started as an assistant editor for them, but then quickly moved up to associate producer. So what my role looks like now for them is I interview a lot of fighters. I help make sure we're telling the right stories and finding different stories that might be unique that we can air in the broadcast. I also edit a lot. So a lot of the pieces you see during fight nights or UFC pay-per-views, we edit, and we edit that content ourselves. So it's kind of cool to see, the start of it, like going and collecting all of that footage, doing that interview, and then being able to edit it and put it into a product that we get to air on whether it be ESPN Plus, ESPN, or our pay-per-views, which is a really cool thing. So my day is never the same. Like today, I'm going to go into the office and edit. Yesterday, I was interviewing athletes for our fight coming up on Saturday. Like 2 weeks ago, I was in Denver traveling to a fighter's camp. So it really just depends what the need is. And then that's sort of how I fill it. I work a lot on our, it's almost like a feeder show to the UFC. It's called Dana White's Contender Series. That's probably my biggest project that I work on. And it's basically telling these prospects stories, and then they go in and fight and in hopes to earn a contract. So it's really important in that show to kind of introduce these people to the world. And it's really about elevating our fighters. And then on the flip side, I have a second job. I'm the sideline reporter for the Desert Dogs here in town. And so what that looks like is it's 9 games a year. We only do the home games and playoffs. Basically, I'm going to practices, finding stories, doing a lot of research, talking to players, talking to coaches, working with a producer and a director, and sort of storytelling, and then putting that all in a script and thinking of questions, that sort of thing, to ask actually on the live broadcast. I think TV is in a weird spot because there's a lot of like broadcast deals up. And I feel like we've been talking about it for a really long time because our generation was the one that was cutting cable. And that was like very scary to people that were older than us and in the industry for a lot longer. So I think at this point, it's just really finding engaging ways to tell stories. And also, I think things are going to start turning into virtual reality. I've had the opportunity to work on some things where I've been working on projects in headsets. I think that that's far off. I don't know how close that is, but I know things are leaning toward giving people more access, seeing things differently, getting their own perspective, being able to make a choice as what they're looking at in a broadcast in sports. So yeah, I think VR is probably the biggest like emerging technology I would say that's coming into this space, but also just unique ways to tell a story. If you look at social media edits, like they're a lot flashier. There's more editing in it. There's more quick storytelling. I mean, that's what TikTok basically is quick storytelling. So that's sort of the way that TV production is going. It's just going at a slower pace. That's a really good question. I think some of the bigger challenges for me have been just the pace. Like it's a lot different. And when you come out of school, you're like, okay, I'm gonna get my job, I'm gonna ease into it. It's fast. And also I think in sports, like it's turn and burn, like you're on, especially live sports. That's what I work in, live sports. Like we're not reflecting back on what just happened. We're going to the next thing. And the next thing for us is every week. And with that being said, in the UFC, there's no off season. So it goes and we have 60 events plus a year. So it's kind of just flying and learning how to balance your personal life, your work life, also while learning new things, new jobs. You're learning something new every single day. And with that, learning how to just be a worker, like interacting with people that you might necessarily not have the same background as, or different experiences, or just learning how to talk to people and like hold conversations, or like write in an email in a professional way. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily things that are taught all of the time. So I think there are a lot of just adjustments jumping from college into the real world. I was part of PRSSA, which is the public relations club. That taught me how to write well. I was part of Tiger Vision, which is the student-run news station, which while it wasn't the most formal TV training, it still sort of dipped our toes into what it could be and what it looks like, and what the thought process behind putting on a show. Working in Clemson athletics was really huge. And then all of the classes, you learn something new. I mean, I had great class of social media in sports and PR in sports. And a lot of the more critical thinking ones don't necessarily apply to the job I have, but they're important because it makes you think about your athletes in a broader spectrum, and it makes you think about sports sort of at a higher level, and just like, oh, we really love watching this game on TV or this fight on TV or whatever it may be. Like there's so much more that goes into it. So yeah, I would say during Clemson, getting involved as much as possible is probably a start, and then really paying attention in class, because I know a lot of people think that you might not pull a lot from class, but you do. You really do. I've learned how to edit. So if you want to get into TV, a really fast way to do that is by editing, and sports TV, especially because someone always needs a highlight cut. Whether it be on Adobe, and I know that's a huge resource at Clemson, or at least it was when I was there. Or really any editing software, like people truly look at that, and it's just another tool in your toolbox if you know how to edit. Yeah, don't be afraid. I mean, when I say, and when I was searching for my first job, I was cold calling everybody. Like I was reaching out on LinkedIn. I was reaching out through, oh, my cheer coach from high school knew some random guy. I was hitting them up. And the worst that people will say to you is no. And a lot of the time people want to help, and like they love talking about themselves, and they love being able to, like, they think that their story, and I'm sure I'm probably one of those people right now, that their story is going to help someone down the road. So just don't be afraid. Like the worst that people will say is no to you, one. And then as far as, networking goes, once you have that initial conversation, be engaged, have questions ready, ask them about, things that they wish they had known, that sort of thing. Then if they walk away from that conversation saying, wow, like they were really prepared, or wow, that was a really good question, they're going to remember you, and they'll be more willing to help you down the line. Yeah. So just don't be afraid to do it. Don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, how I got my job reporting, I reached out to the ticketing office. I was like, hey, I know there's this new team coming to town. Just keep me in mind, or could you put me in touch with PR? Keep me in mind if you need a reporter. And that's literally how I got the job. Like every single job I've gotten is because I've reached out to people. I reached out to this girl and she worked at ESPN. She's awesome. She's 2 years older than me. And so I was reaching out to her about working at ESPN. Come to find out, she's in the Charlotte office and we've become extremely close friends. She was working the NFL draft after I'd moved to Vegas. She came and stayed with me. She's now in Cincinnati working for a soccer club, but she was one of the huge people I would say that I've reached out to. So yeah, I've definitely used the Clemson network. I hope to continue to use the Clemson network. It's a really powerful tool. And like when someone says they're from Clemson, it's automatically like, oh, whatever you need or however can I help you? Which is, I think, unique because not a lot of people have that. And not like you talk to these other people that go to different colleges and they're like, wait, you have such a strong alumni, base. How is that possible? And it truly is something special. I think I started out sort of like a hard charge, and I'm still a hard charger, don't get me wrong, but like I have to be on my email all the time. I have to do this, I have to do that. Like, oh my God, they just texted me, they need a response right away. Or even last year I was really bad at it because there's no off season. So I wasn't really prioritizing putting myself or like my needs or my mental health first. So I think, and that has been like a big thing for me this year in 2024, my resolution has been balance. And I think by doing that, like, I think it's cliche to say, oh, work-life balance, there's a balance. Like at the end of the day, it all evens out, but it's like, you're going to have to work a 12, 13-hour day every once in a while. Like that's just life. It sucks. Like at the end of the day, you don't want to do that, but then that next day go in a little bit later or, leave work a little bit earlier, go to that workout class, and find things that you love to do like outside of work. And I think moving to Las Vegas, like I moved here for my job. I don't have a lot of friends in Las Vegas. I don't have family here. My work became my identity when I first moved here. And it was really hard to find things, especially post-grad, because you don't have like this built-in, friend base or like institution where you can meet people. It's work. And I work with a lot of men, which is great. They're awesome people, but at the same time, like that's not who I'm spending my Saturdays with. So it's really just putting yourself out there and finding things that you love to do. So I love working out. So if I can skip out of work a little early to go to a workout class, I will. If it's okay and it's reasonable and my work's done, or like just reading or book club or whatever it may be, just sort of putting myself out there in the sense that like, one, it's important to balance your life. Like at the end of the day, it's just a job. Like tomorrow they'll carry on if you weren't there. And thinking about it at a grander scale, and then finding things you love to do. That's really important. My experience has shifted a lot at ESPN, especially at the level I was. It was a lot of women, and it was really cool to see and work with a lot of girls that had the same goals or same dreams or ambitions or whatever. It was a lot of common thinking, which was amazing. And I think it was really cool. And it kind of broke that stigma for me, like, oh, it's male dominated, because I was just with so many girls. And then I transitioned to the UFC. And if you take like sports being male dominated, okay, like times it by 10, because all of the fans are men, or it's their girlfriends that watch the fights because of their boy. Like it's a lot of men who just like this sport, who work in this sport. I think there are, besides our production coordinators, there are 3 other women in our department, and there's only 1 other girl my age. Everybody else is older and has been there for a really long time, which all the power to them. And they're people that I look up to and really admire in their careers, because I think we're still at the stage where a lot of women working in sports are considered pioneers. I don't feel that way, but like they truly were. So that's something that is really cool to look at. I think it means a lot, because like I think about myself at 12, and all I wanted to do was work in sports, and seeing these women come before me who are doing it and have done it, like shows it's possible. And I think like women continuing to work in sports, like shows the next generation of 12-year-old girls that you can do anything you want. And whether that be sports or a different form of communication, or my sister's in, like whatever it may be, like you can do it no matter what. Like it shouldn't be because a guy says you can't. it's not easy all the time. It's not, I mean, you hear the stories of, and I've never had anything super bad happen to me, but like all the girls in my department work a lot harder. All of us feel like we have to. All of us, I think, get stressed a little bit more in a different way, and like have a harder time balancing work life. And I just think that's a struggle that comes with being a woman in this industry, and just being a girl in general. I think we just think differently. And yeah, so it's definitely had its ups and downs and its challenges. And like you certainly have men that don't get it, or somehow make your life a little bit more difficult, or say the one comment that makes you like kind of sort of look at them funny. So it does happen, sure, but I think that if that's the hill you want to die on, like sports isn't the right industry for you, because while things have changed and it has gotten a lot better, it's still there. And but it shouldn't be a deterrent, I think, anymore. Like I think it used to be this big thing where like, oh, it's so scary to be a woman in a male dominated industry. I don't think it's necessarily that way anymore. I think there has been a lot of change, especially since I mean, before I graduated college. So yeah, I think it's a really special thing to be a woman in a male dominated industry, and sort of just proving to my younger self that it doesn't matter, you can do it. Use the Clemson network. Feel free to reach out to me. Yeah, just don't be afraid to network, really. And I know I've said that already, but I truly believe that's like the biggest thing that helped me get all three of my jobs that I've had post grad.
Learn more about our alumni, students, faculty, and staff and their wonderful endeavors by following us online.